Hello, I'm Pastor Dave, and this is your Monday morning sermon recap for Monday, August 22nd or 23rd, 2021. Here we go. This week we tackled when David was told no. Now, David was one who had a heart that inclined him towards God. He did, on almost every occasion, what was right before God. And he had a plan to build a massive house for God, a temple in Jerusalem, the city that he took, fulfilling God's covenant with Abraham. That was the plan. Nathan signed off on it until Nathan had a dream from God and God said no. And this tells us something interesting because often when we think of God saying no, we think of something bad. This isn't that case because David did not seek something bad, yet God told him no. And this does seem odd. But really, this comes down to a difference in desires. Do we desire to do what we want to do or what God wants done? The temple was David's plan. It was his idea. It wasn't God's plan. God had different ideas. And ultimately, the big takeaway is that David ultimately followed God's will and not his own. And that's something that we should also seek to do. And when we can do that, it actually helps us grow in faith because it shows that we are recognizing who God is and what God can do. I mean, one of the things that David was able to do to follow God's will was recognize that God can see things beyond our own vision. David was a man of war. God did not want the man of war to build his house. David didn't necessarily see that until he was told no, and that's the same for us when we really think about it. Because we are human, we have limits. God can see much more than we can ever hope to see. And it also shows us how much that we can be focused on the current situation or focus on the earthly rewards instead of the bigger picture. Because we are people who tend to want things now. We want things on our timeline. We don't always follow God's timing because we think if God doesn't give it to us, something's wrong with us. But that's not the case. Because even when God says no, there are other rewards for faithfulness. Maybe ones that we don't yet see. And when we bring this all together, we can really see that God does look further ahead. And we need to have the faith to trust in God and God's plan. And even for us, when we're looking for those rewards, when we're looking for something special, we can keep in mind that when God says no, other opportunities can arise. Or it can help us focus on the blessings that we already have. Really, what it comes down to is faith. Do you have the faith to trust in God's plan and God's will, or are we focused on our own? So that's your sermon recap for this week. Remember, we worship at 8:45 Sunday mornings at East Salem, 10:15 at Otterbein, and we live stream on the East Salem UMC Facebook page. But until next Sunday, I'm Pastor Dave, and I hope to see you in the pews.